There we are. Welcome to all of you. People are entering now from the waiting room. Glad you could be with us this evening. We're excited to have Jason Webb here with us tonight to tell us a little bit about his journey with Soccer Shots, and we have his brother Matt here to interview him through this process, and so we have that to look forward to. Before we get started with them, a few housekeeping items. Be sure to tune in to us on October 1st will be our next best talk. That's Ron Rakua, Executive Vice President of Pagula Sports Entertainment, President and founder of AdPro Sports. On the 13th of October, we have Precious Barnes, who is a medical doctor with an amazing story that you'll want to hear. Mark Moyer on the 27th of October, Senior Vice President, Regulatory Affairs, and Pharmacovigilance, which was a new word for me, project management and project leads at Immunocore. He takes drugs and takes them to market and leads teams that do that in a race with other drug companies. And then on November 11th, Denise Jones, President and CEO of the Resource Center in Jamestown. So a good lineup that we want you to join us for throughout the semester. My name's Dan Noyes. I'm Regional Director of Development in the advancement area of Houghton. And glad to have you all here tonight. I want to tell you before we begin, please keep yourselves muted. If you have questions throughout the talk tonight, please direct them to Matthew Webb on the chat, and we will address those at the end. If you can include your name and you include your class year and what you're studying, or if you're an alum, or if you're faculty, staff, or if you know Matt and Jason from your childhood. Love to hear from you tonight. There's some family members out there as well, so anyone can ask a question. Probably be best if you want to use speaker view tonight. You'll get the best experience. And I want to introduce Matt Webb. Matt's our athletic director. He came to Houghton in 1992 with his wife Betsy. At the time, he was the resident director of Shenawana Hall. Later on was also the assistant coach and then head coach of the soccer team and associate athletic director. And he now serves as the athletic director here at Houghton. And welcome, Matt, and he'll introduce his brother, Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. It's great to be here. And it's really my distinct privilege to introduce our guest this evening. Jason Webb is a former professional soccer player. And prior to his professional career, he was a collegiate All-American. And he carries with him 15 years of experience leading Soccer Shots, one of North America's fastest growing children's franchise businesses. Since 2000, he's been a startup founder of several business concepts, including a food vending business, a clothing technology company, a real estate development company, and Soccer Shots. And today, Soccer Shots is the largest and fastest growing early childhood soccer program in North America, serving over 400,000 children annually across 37 states and Canada. In addition to Jason's business acumen and success, he also happens to be my younger brother, as Dan already mentioned. And for as much as I'd like to take credit for all the good things Jason's has ever done, that obviously just isn't the case. Well, except maybe for a few things. But his ability to demonstrate high character and professionalism while being extremely driven in pursuit of excellence as an entrepreneur and businessman are admirable and are key components, I'm sure, to which have led to the growth of Soccer Shots. But I have to say that even more admirable to me is knowing how he loves his wife, his 4 children, and how they are his top priority. And that's really a true testament to who he is as a man of faith and as a husband and as a father. So thanks, Jason, for being with us tonight. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You bet. So let's jump right into it and start with what is Soccer Shots? How did you start Soccer Shots? And sort of tell us the story of how things all got started.
Yeah, sure. Very happy to be here. Good evening, Houghton Nation. Matt, thanks for the introduction. I am privileged to come from the Webb family and look up to you and Eric, my 2 older brothers. So thanks for having me as a guest. Question is, what is Soccer Shots? Yeah, I'll start with that. Soccer Shots is an intro to soccer program for children ages 2 through 8. Our sweet spot is really children ages 2 through 5. It is a soccer teaching program, although character development is a component that's taught through every lesson. The program is offered to children really across North America through coaches who are trained in early development practices and basically how to teach children that young how to get started with soccer. So just picture me and about 10 4-year-olds, some pop-up goals, some cones, discs in a small space that we call Soccer Island. And it's basically a program that gets the children excited about the game, done in a very fun, creative, safe, and engaging way. That's what Soccer Shots is.
Yeah, very good. And so, you know, after college, you got into this. You've led Soccer Shots for 15 years now. How's it grown, and what have you learned along the way?
Yeah, sure. And maybe I skipped over the origin story. I think you had asked really how it began.
Yeah.
So we'll get into how it began and then growth. So yeah, this concept actually goes back to the late 1990s. We of course didn't invent soccer or teaching soccer to young children, but in the late 90s, after graduating from Messiah College, now Messiah University, I was down in Charlotte, North Carolina, playing on a semi-professional soccer team called the Charlotte Eagles. For any Houghton soccer historians in the crowd, some of my teammates included Jamie Wellington and KJ Hill and Sanjeev Parmar. And those were really, you know, terrific years in my early career. And because we weren't paid a lot of money, we all did odds and ends to find ways to make some extra income on the side. And one thing that many of us did was coached soccer. So whether that be a high school team, just a youth team, individual training, camps in the summer, that was something that many of us gained experience doing as kind of a side hustle, if you will, to playing soccer. And one particular off season, one of my teammates, Jeremy Sorzano, was invited by a local daycare center in Charlotte to bring a soccer program to her school. And Jeremy was the captain of the Charlotte Eagles, well known, well respected, also happened to be really good at working with young children. Now, he had worked with 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. He'd never worked with 3 and 4-year-olds, but Jeremy thought, hey, I'll give this a try. And so he brought a soccer program to a daycare center in Charlotte. A week later, when he came back, 20 kids had signed up for his program. And the next step for him was to introduce that program, you know, to 8 or 9 other daycare centers throughout Charlotte. And before he knew it, he had 100 kids signed up in what is now Soccer Shots. And he was coaching 3, 4, and 5-year-olds every morning of the week. Well, Jeremy and I were teammates and became good friends. We both had an entrepreneurial spirit. I thought that the soccer program that he was running in Charlotte was pretty clever. And I moved north to play for the Harrisburg Heat, an indoor team, and asked him if he thought it would be all right for me to try Soccer Shots up here in Harrisburg. And he said, sure, go give it a try. And before I knew it, I had 100 kids in my program as well. And so we actually ran our programs complementary. We were not partners in each other's businesses, but we shared interests and we talked regularly. And before we knew it, we were done playing soccer and we're just about full-time Soccer Shots operators. And this attracted the attention of some of our other teammates and former, you know, playmates, teammates from college and the Charlotte Eagles. And so a few of them asked if they could now bring the concept to their city. And that was when Jeremy and I got our heads together and said, hey, we might have a business here. We brought some advisors in and ended up hiring a franchise attorney who helped us franchise the concept. So Jeremy, at that point, that was 2005, Jeremy and I became partners in the franchising company, which basically got into the business of helping others launch this same business. And so in 2005, we sold franchises in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Northern Delaware, Cleveland, Ohio, and Miami, Florida.
So how many franchises are there now? You know, the info I have is you're in 39 states, you're in Canada. How many total franchises are there now?
Yeah, so since 2005, we've been fortunate to experience, 15 years of franchising and 15 years of consecutive annual growth. Now that streak will come to an end here in 2020. I'll tell you a little bit about that later.
Sure.
But we've really enjoyed, you know, not just growth, but fast growth. In fact, I don't think there's been a year where we haven't grown by at least 20%. And so we've just been in the really keeping up with growth and trying to do our best to do that. And so, you know, those programs that start with 100 kids, become 5,000 kids and 10,000 kids. And I think, Houston, for example, is a franchisee in our system. Our Houston operator is serving 30 or 40,000 kids a year just in Houston. And we've been adding 10 or 20 franchises per year ever since 2005. So yeah, we've grown to about 250 franchises across 37 states and Canada. They are owned by 150 different franchise operators. And I think the system as a whole in 2019 introduced soccer to almost 500,000 children across North America.
Wow, that's great. So within a franchise, I'm going off script here a little bit, but what's that umbrella look like under a franchise? Who are the folks doing the teaching of these kids? Obviously, the franchise owner's not doing all the teaching and running all the classes. How's that sort of scaled down to who are your frontline folks?
Yeah, oftentimes when they start the franchise, they are, doing a little bit of everything, including coaching children. Mm-hmm. But as they grow and as they scale, they are, hiring coaches all the time. And then a typical team would have an executive director, maybe a director of coaching, a director of programs. A larger team would also have multiple coordinators, folks tending to technology, social media, et cetera. But every team is really dependent on its core of fantastic coaches who are truly the ones impacting the children every day.
Sure. So what are some things you've learned in this process, as you've grown the company and you've seen it grow, and like you said, that track record of growth will probably come to a halt this year. We'll talk about that sort of toward the end, but what are some concepts? What are some things you've really learned as you've gone through this process and grown this company to what it is today?
Yeah, I've so much enjoyed this career. I think I was reflecting on this question, and I think part of it is that just when I think I've understood my business and figured it all out, or understood, the relationship that comes with franchising, the franchisor and the franchisees, just when I think I've figured it out, we fall on our face, we make a mistake, we learn something completely new. And truly, I think business leaders, at least I, have thrived on those kinds of challenges. And I love solving problems, and a day doesn't go by that we don't have a problem or a challenge to overcome. And this year's presented all kinds of challenges. And so that's just one learning, the ability to be nimble, flexible, adaptable, and even humble to recognize that we've never arrived. We're always learning and growing. I think another one, a really valuable one that comes with franchising is just, people, decisions, and really relationships. One of the things we say here at Soccer Shots is there's no bigger decision that we make than who. And the who means, who we bring on to our corporate staff here, or who we award a franchise to, or who a franchisee chooses to become a coach and serve children in their community. And so especially in a franchising business where we call our franchisees franchise partners, and they live British Columbia, Miami, Florida, Hawaii. We are truly all across the country, and it requires really strong threads of relationship and bond to be a successful franchisor and to have successful franchise relationships. And so, that's just something, people decisions. I've been on the wrong side of people decisions, and those are terrible places to be in as a leader. Really, the most difficult days in business is when you're dealing with people conflict and people issues. And I've been so fortunate that, thousands of fantastic people have been attracted to our organization. And I think those are the most rewarding days, when mission aligned, hardworking, caring, really high capacity folks, together are achieving something great. And that's been a rewarding part of business.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I can definitely sort of identify with that in my particular role. One of the things that's just been impressed upon me, and I'm realizing in just my early years of being the athletic director, maybe the most important part of my job is who my coaches are. And they're the frontline people, they're the recruiters, they're the ones working with our athletes, and it's just critical in terms of who they are. And hopefully I don't ever make a wrong decision in a hiring process, but it's really critical. Yeah, I hear you. So thanks. Talk with us a little bit, Jason, about obviously your college experience was in Christian higher ed at Messiah University, and as a student athlete, you experienced, playing soccer there for 4 years. But talk with us about how your Christian higher ed experience has prepared you for where you are now and for what's sort of taken you from when you graduated at Messiah, and it's prepared you for life in this world, in this business world that you've sort of helped build up.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, I attended Messiah College, now university, studied accounting there, played soccer there. And I had a great experience at Messiah. It was really, formative 4 years for me. Met so many great people. I think one of the things that Messiah did well, and I know that Houghton does this extremely well too, is just the emphasis that's placed on relationship, right? And so I think these Christian, universities, colleges are trying to create environments and communities where relationships can be facilitated and fostered and even challenged, right? And so, whether that be small class cohorts or for me, even, relationships on my team as a soccer player, but community living, small groups, Bible studies. I just really think that's emphasized in a unique and special way in the smaller Christian schools that I've seen. And I think that, and again, back to my previous answer, the life that the career that and path that I'm on in franchising is so dependent on being able to build strong relationships and understand how to work through, challenging relationships. And so I just think that was a great setup for me. And one of the areas I look back and appreciate Messiah for. I think too, Messiah, again, I studied accounting. So just the academic preparation that I had for my life and career in business was really great. Messiah happens to have, I think, the second best accounting program in Pennsylvania, second to the Ivy League's University of Pennsylvania in terms of CPA exam pass rates after graduation. And so I actually did pass the CPA exam and had, some offers to work in, the big six accounting firm world. And even though that wasn't the career path that I chose, I really was prepared for life after school. And maybe for me, the thought there is just that a Christian higher ed does not have to be less than, a secular university in any way. And I think that if you're a student out there, I think the preparation that you're getting at Houghton is really fantastic and similar to mine at Messiah. And maybe the crux of your question is just how did Messiah shape my thinking around business? And, it really did. I think that, maybe even heading into Messiah, I had some concerns about business, or there's just some perceptions, that or negative perceptions that can be had about business. Certainly we've all seen the shadow side of, for-profit business, whether that be, self-interest or corporate greed or corruption. There's things that are kind of associated with being in the for-profit business world that I was maybe a little unsure about. And I think Messiah was where I began to be exposed to maybe the idea that for-profit business can be a vehicle for positive change in our world, in our society, in our community. And so, I found servant leadership, began to study servant leadership while at Messiah, and began to learn about things like social entrepreneurship and redemptive entrepreneurship. And maybe just kind of started to realize that, this idea of innovation and for-profit business doesn't have to be at tension all the time with doing good or common good capitalism, as a phrase. And so, and especially the business that we're in, we easily could be a nonprofit business, in terms of our mission, our purpose, and what we do. We're working with young families, especially young children. And we don't look at these children as future U.S. national team players. We look at these young children as future parents and future community leaders and future teachers. And so, I think Messiah did well to prepare me for, it can be this both and I've really just thrived because I love entrepreneurism. I love business, but I also really value the positive impact that we've been able to have as a business in our community.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing you talk, and I know I haven't experienced Soccer Shots intimately, but I've I know enough to know that, obviously so much of what you do is creating fun. I mean, these kids are having a blast, and you've got, videos out there and little kids running around high five and they score a goal. And it's this crazy, there's times I think about, like, how do you run a 30 or 40-minute soccer session for 4-year-olds? Like, what can you actually accomplish? But more importantly than exposing them to soccer, like, I know you have this curriculum that's based on, I'll call it character development, I guess. Maybe you can correct me or refine that a little bit. But I mean, there's a curriculum that kids are learning principles of character, of integrity, or what you've got the whole curriculum. I don't know the whole curriculum, but I can't help but think that, that higher ed experience, those are very, very formative years for solidifying, as I like to say, for the young, men and women that come through Houghton, for sort of solidifying and grounding them in their faith and their convictions and their morals. And there's just part of me that can't help but think that grounding that you and Jeremy and others in leadership at Soccer Shots have all had, has helped lead sort of that emphasis. And I know that's a huge part of what you guys do. And for as much as parents might be thrilled about their kids getting to do soccer, I can't help but think that they're even more thrilled about what they're actually taking away. The kids are taking away is a whole lot more than just soccer.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. And let me see if I can get this right. I wasn't prepared to talk about, the character.
No, sorry.
That's all right. But the character component of our curriculum is a really big deal to us. I mean, I mentioned, we're not aspiring to, to win the World Cup with this next generation, although that'd be amazing, but we need to make the World Cup first. We missed out on the last World Cup. So we don't take responsibility for that, but it is a kind of on the wish list. But I think there's this belief that sports just does develop strong character in people who participate in sport. And I think we've come to learn that, that there's some partial truth in that. I think that, when I think of like performance traits, like character traits such as grit and determination and hustle and hard work and ethic, I do think there's maybe a natural parallel between, hey, you're going to get involved in sport. You're going to be, these things are almost going to become required of you. They are natural traits that are developed in individuals who participate in sport. But there's another kind of set of character traits that we think about and are intentional about. And those are moral character traits. And I don't think that those just inherently develop in people unless there's a coach who's really intentional about developing them in his or her players, or a parent, is intentional about developing those in his or her child. And so those would be things just like being respectful and caring for other people, being empathetic, or being honest. These are moral character traits. And so we've decided that as an organization, soccer is kind of the stage in which we play, but both performance traits and character traits are really important to our curriculum, and they're woven through every lesson plan. And I have countless stories of, I'll actually share one. A child I coached years ago, first week, I mean, she must have been 3 years old, tiny little thing, massive dad, came walking up, little girl hiding behind dad and scared of me, never been in a group experience like this before. And nothing special happened other than by week 2 or 3, she kind of warmed up to the idea of Soccer Shots, and I did all the things, high five, learned her name, cared about her, whatever. And then literally 3 years later, I am out observing one of my other coaches, and just to kind of check out Soccer Shots, make sure it's going well at this community park. And woman comes up next to me and starts talking to me, introduces herself, asks me if I remember her little girl, who I had coached like 3 years earlier. So I did not remember her little girl, but I watched her little girl, and she had become a pretty good little player. She seemed to be confident and, having a great time. And in that moment, she began to explain to me how her daughter had not missed a single season of Soccer Shots for 3 straight years. This was like her 11th consecutive season of Soccer Shots. And that she's had a bunch of different coaches along the way, and that every single coach has been terrific. So of course I'm sitting there, I'm extremely proud to hear this great testimonial. Well, she goes on to kind of well up with tears and talk about how during this time, these past 3 years, she and her husband have split. Dad's not much part of the family anymore. And that this little girl has really been kind of vulnerable through all of that. And it's really disrupted her childhood. But commented that each week she looks forward to her soccer shots class more than anything else, because her soccer shots coaches are investing in her, caring about her, know her name, give her a high five. And so this little girl is developing courage and confidence through sport, right? And also learning great traits during a time where she's going through, just a challenge in her life. So, story of one young little girl, but I mean, there was a moment there where it's like, this is the most proud I could be of Soccer Shots and to be in business doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, those are the stories, we live for. That's great. So let's jump into sort of our last topic, which is, I mean, everybody's familiar with it. We're talking about it all the time, but how has COVID impacted Soccer Shots? And how have you sort of innovated and led during these strange times and responded to what COVID has done?
Yeah, COVID. I'm not much of a New Year's guy, but I see our world like eager to get to New Year's 2020 so we can like get into the next year. And listen, COVID has disrupted so much, and I think many people have suffered. I think obviously the saddest part of it all is the, those who have experienced just personal loss. I think that's terribly sad. I don't want to miss that reflection in all of this. But those of us involved in business and leadership, probably really of any kind, have certainly had to deal with COVID, have faced the challenge and disruption. Soccer Shots, of course, I mean, it hit us square in the face. I mentioned to you that we have experienced nothing but kind of phenomenal growth, 15 straight years, 60 consecutive quarters of growth, oftentimes 20% or more. We're constantly kind of chasing to keep up. We're constantly engaging in new initiatives. We're constantly hiring. Well, all of that until March 15th, basically the middle of March this year. And just to give you an idea of how abrupt it happened for us, we, for the first 15 days of March, our system as a whole was averaging about $300,000 a day in revenue until March 15th. And then we literally dropped to zero. We had no revenue, zero revenue for the second half of March. We had zero revenue for the entire month of April. We had zero revenue for the entire month of May.
Wow. And
we basically had zero revenue for the entire month of June. And so that was, jolting for us to we had to adjust to that immediately and figure out, especially without any, certainty about when revenue would return. And so, for the first time in our business experience, we had to look closely at the expense side of our business. That was what we could control. And so we canceled all of our big events, all of our big projects. We suspended company travel. We sent everybody home. We turned off the heat, or the air conditioning at the office. I mean, we've gone tight on all of our expenses. We've also, we've put kind of a forecast or a model together to say, okay, hey, if we live simply, if we kind of, so to speak, live on rice and beans, how long can we go if our revenue only is 25% or only is 35% or only is 50%? And so I think, one of the ways we've led through that, I think you asked that too, was we just decided that our team, our staff, we were just going to be as transparent as we possibly could about the financial situation. So in this moment where there's uncertainty and nobody knows what's happening, we wanted to be kind of candid with our staff and say, hey, we don't know the future either, but here is the information that we have, and we want you to have it too. This is the information that we're going to be making decisions off of. And so here are the triggers where things get more painful for us. And here's what it's going to take for us to survive and to thrive. And so, yeah, that was obviously, that's been, I actually think that we've received positive feedback from our staff about that. I think there's been trust, just in that spirit of candor that's happened there. And our team has rallied around, just having information and being part of kind of in the loop on what's going on. And so, that's financial. I'll maybe catch up to where we are in a moment, but operationally, we've had to adjust as well. And if I go back to that day, March 15th, it was some day around there. We by the way, we had about 125,000 families who had paid for a spring season. So even though we weren't making revenue in those following months, we actually had revenue in the bank that was now ready to be served with a spring season. But of course, we could not be with any child. There was no coaching going on. And so we made a pivot, in the moment that, looking back, was, kind of round the clock work. Our team here, in fact, this room that I'm in was turned into a studio, and we filmed 30 soccer shot sessions that we called Soccer Shots on the Go. And we put a marketing plan together about delivering those video sessions to our paid customers as a replacement for the in-person Soccer Shots season. And amazingly, about 80% of our customers accepted those videos as their spring season. And I mean, quite literally, that saved the business for over 100 of our franchisees. And so,
Wow.
necessity is the mother of innovation, we say here. And so we've continued to innovate. We've expanded upon our virtual program offerings. We've invented something called Soccer Shots neighborhood programs, which gets really hyper local, bring it to your backyard, kind of in the with a safe group of siblings or neighbors. We've done a number of things. All of our programming has been adjusted. Our curriculum's been rewritten. There's no more high fives, which is a staple to our business. And so, yeah, we've made those changes. And I'd say one other thing, just a way in which we've led. I mean, I think we've seen some of our competitors just kind of lay low, maybe duck their heads and wait till this blows over. And while we've been patient and desire to exercise great caution, we've also said, hey, let's meet needs that we can meet, and let's pursue 100% of the opportunity that is available to us. And so in certain parts of the country, things opened sooner and wider. And so as we've pursued those opportunities, we've actually exceeded our projections for the months of July and August and now September, and probably exceeded them beyond what I thought was even possible. And so that's really encouraging. We're not out of the woods yet, but we are nimble right now and flexible and adaptable to kind of go where the wind takes us. And I think we're in a great position to succeed. And 2021, we just look forward to it.
No, that's awesome. Although, if high fives are now no longer available, right behind you on the wall, big, bold, black letter, high fives. You have to change that to
air fives or foot fives.
Foot fives. There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got a few questions that have come in, Jason.
Great.
And I think, because I think it ties in really, really well to just what you've been done, what you just shared. And this comes from Kathy Freytag, who's our Associate Dean of the faculty. And she just asked if you'd share the story about the third lap. And just so you know, I shared that with our administrative team here at the college. I've also shared it with my staff in the department as just a bit of a motivational piece. I just thought it was a great analogy, metaphor from sport for just sort of approaching the COVID challenge. But just wonder if you'd be willing to share that story with us.
Sure, I'll do my best. Thanks for the question.
Sure.
So the third lap, you're referencing, maybe I'll call it a blog.
Yeah.
I'm not a blogger, but I did write this article for our franchise community about a month or two ago. And maybe you picked it up on LinkedIn or something, Matt, but it was a reflection. I was trying to draw a parallel between how I'm feeling, what this experience is like, and relating it to a moment in time where I felt the same way, but in a different stage of my life. And so at Messiah, the preseason fitness test every year is the 1 mile run. And it's a short run. I mean, some argue that it's not the best fitness test for soccer players, that you need to be able to run longer than that. But I think it's a great test because, a distance runner has to work really hard to run a mile fast. And a sprinter has to develop a bit of endurance to run a whole mile, fast. And the benchmark, the standard at Messiah happened to be 5 minutes. And so I guess the point of this story is that, every summer, off on our own, we would be training for the 5-minute mile, to run the 5-minute mile in August. And without doubt, every year, every time I ran it on my own, I never could run it in 5 minutes. But you get to campus at the beginning of the season, and you get out there and all your teammates are there and your coach is there. The pressure is kind of on, adrenaline is going. You also just don't want to let anybody down. And even though maybe your best time in training was 5:22 or 5:19 or whatever, you kind of have this hope and belief that but maybe I'll run it in less than 5 minutes this morning, for some reason. And so the first lap is fine. It's actually you have to resist running the first lap too fast, just because you're so, amped up, and we always wanted our fourth lap to be our best lap. And so you kind of just try to hold yourself back from going out too fast in the first lap. And then the second lap, you start to feel it. If you've trained well, you can endure it, but, legs tighten up a little bit, lungs starting to get tight. Maybe for the first time, doubt creeps in, what if I don't make it? But, you're just running. And I think the fourth lap, I'll jump to the fourth lap, because the fourth lap is, you see the finish line in sight. So even though it's a whole lap, the end is in sight, you're there, people are rallying, you've actually saved a little bit left. And so that fourth lap can be your fast lap. You can finish strong. And so we at Messiah would always talk about the third lap. The third lap is basically where you've been drug out into deep waters. You just don't have it physically, you emotionally and mentally, you start to wither. And yet there's this thing that happens, because you're there with your teammates and the community and the camaraderie almost kind of carries you. When it's all over, you're kind of did I run the third lap? And it's or was something carrying me? And so, the point of that is that third lap is a special lap, because you realize you're not in it alone, and you're depending on other people to encourage you and come along and literally run beside you to kind of pace you and all of that. And I think, the last 6 months, it's felt like we're in the third lap. It's kind of I don't quite see the finish line. I don't know how this comes together for us. And fatigue has really set in. Maybe I feel like I have nothing left. And I think for our franchise community, we have this beautiful community where we're all in this together. And we've really been able to encourage each other and inspire each other. And we're kind of carrying each other right now. And it's been neat to see. And so that was the parallel of the third lap.
Well, and it's applicable in any sector, right? I mean, in the business franchisee world, it's applicable. You're rallying around each other on a much smaller scale. Like in my department, it's language we've adopted a little bit as we are rallying around each other as coaches, supporting one another. Each coach has their own specific thing. Our soccer coach is really concerned about soccer, but supporting the field hockey coach and that sort of thing. So in any case, I just think it's really applicable. It's really neat. So another question came in actually from Dan Noyes, who got this whole thing started. Actually a few questions from Dan, but I'm going to deal with one that I think's interesting and a good question is, how do you deal with quality control among coaches who now are all over North America? How do you maintain that level of quality and as you continue to just expand?
Yeah, good question, Dan. I think, one of the risks in franchising in general is that you're now kind of passing the brand off to somebody else really far away. And you're not there to oversee it and to kind of own and fully control the brand. So it's not just the coaching, it's the communication. It's really all elements of the operation. So Dan, I think, fundamentally for us, it really goes back to the who. it comes back to the people decision. And so, because we ultimately can't control every moment, right, and every decision that is made. But if we've done a great job at making the right person decision in terms of the franchisee, and do our best to train them, and impart our core values, and expect them to kind of gravitate towards the culture that it impacts the behavior, then they're going to be compelled to make good who decisions for themselves, and to run a great business. Now, that's all sounds good, and I think truly there is great power, probably the greatest power in that. That's kind of almost like the carrot. There are moments where there's a stick, and we'll need to do an audit or a site visit or something like that, and there are ways we can apply some pressures to help improve their businesses and coaching selection as well. We also, I should point out, we have a team of operations support specialists. We call them OSs, just really critical function within our business. They are assigned franchises across the country, and they travel to them all the time. They build relationships with those franchise operators, and they're basically there, to hold them accountable, to teach, train, build up. And so, what you want is not a franchisee who's not running things well and hiding. You want a franchisee who, even when is facing challenges, will bring that to their OS in a desire to improve or fix a problem.
You've used the word relationship a lot tonight. That's sort of really stuck out to me. And I think it goes back to probably your upbringing and your core values and all that. But I just think that's so critical. And the third lap, if you don't have the relationship, the idea of the third lap just really breaks down too, because you're not going to have that interest in wanting to support one another. This is an interesting question also from Dan. And as I think about this question, boy, I know exactly how I would answer it. I would never even have started or ventured into business for myself. But are you a naturally risk tolerant person, or was the idea of going into business for yourself more exciting than it was scary? And I think about any of our students who might be on right now, thinking about graduating from college, and the idea of, you have maybe this entrepreneurial bent or spirit. How risk tolerant do you need to be? I think about it, I'm like, man, I could never do it. I just need to know what my salary is, even if it's 1/4 what it could be if I was willing to go out and take a risk. But how risk tolerant do you need to be to forge ahead into what you've done?
I think you need to be somewhat risk tolerant. I don't know where that came from, because nobody else in my family is an entrepreneur. So I was raised, by a business professor who understood business and taught a lot of business. And so I was around it, understood it, studied it, but I didn't grow up, in a home that had businesses. And so, I do think for me, my partner, Jeremy, is more entrepreneurial than me, kind of naturally. In his family, he did grow up in an entrepreneurial home. So there's been a number of, entrepreneur moments in my life where I've kind of watched Jeremy fiddle around with it and stumble. And then I've entered in, and Sockshot's is a great example. I mean, he was doing this for a year or two before, so I watched him kind of figure some things out to take some of the risk out of it. Right. I'd also say, franchising is taking a risk, but the whole idea of franchising is you're doing it with a franchisor, and there's other franchisees. So the idea is you're in a business, but you're not alone in that business.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for those in the audience, if there's students in the audience, I love to talk to college students who are at that stage where they're thinking about career and future. And, I don't know if there's a lot of people who are just like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I would say get work experience. I mean, get applicable experience. You don't have to start out starting your own business. But the advice that I always give to people is, and this has just been true for me, and so it's really my only experience, is to the extent you can get involved in something that you love to do and that you're really good at or can be really good at, just go after that. I don't care if it pays a lot or doesn't pay a lot, go after that. I think for me, I've always enjoyed the game of soccer, playing it, coaching it, watching it, just being around it. That's been something that's a passion of mine. I do love business. As I mentioned, I've been a part of several businesses, and I love education and teaching and coaching. I love kind of the mentorship side of it. And so I don't know, I think there was a moment earlier in my career where I had this CPA license and I had this career path with public accounting that was very legitimate and very much a real thing. And I wrestled with this idea of, hey, I've gone to college, I've put a lot of time and energy into this career track, but what I love is soccer. But soccer is that's not really a career. And even though I was playing, I wasn't getting paid a lot to do it. And so I was giving up, what was kind of perceived as the track that you would go on in exchange for something that I was just really passionate about doing. And I loved kind of the way we could invest in other people and invest in children and so forth. And, I think of the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000, the miracle that took place. Well, I also think of the little boy in that story who offered up what he had. He had, the fish and the loaves of bread, and he didn't have much. And I think I used to think that way. I used to think like, I have like soccer. I love soccer. Like it's not much, but it's what I really want to do. Is there a way I can make a career out of this? Because I just want to be involved in soccer and coaching and being around the game and bringing a positive thing to the community. And so, for me, it did work out in a career sense too, but I just think that folks find their greatest success and their most satisfaction in their career when they're blending, those things that God gave them that they're really good at or they're really interested in and are able to kind of offer them up and find a way to pursue them with everything. Try to be in that spot. That's where I'd encourage young folks to go.
Yeah,
I know you have to get a job and pay off school debt. Those are real things too. And it's okay to do that.
But the Lord
blend the two.
The Lord gives us passions, doesn't he? And I think he wants to bless those things. So, and I know as you started your career, you dabbled with Zyfex clothing company, and you've got this little popcorn business that still continues today, and you're popping popcorn for your niece and nephew's graduation parties, and you've got your real estate business that you're dabbling on the side. So I do know as you started, you were dabbling in like just a variety of little different things, and Soccer Shots is the one that obviously eventually took off and became your career. So.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, I think we need to wrap up here, and thank you for being with us. Dan, I don't know if there's anything in closing that you want to share to
No, just thank you, Jason, and thanks, Matt, for they've been talking about this presentation for a while, and just appreciate you sharing. And it's an encouragement to me as somebody who's had a child grow up that I can't help but think that you are making a difference in the lives of these young kids, and I can't help but think that you're also modeling some things for parents around sports that are very positive, and it's probably changing the culture in some great ways too. So I just can't imagine that's not true with all the things that you described, and the values that are on the wall behind you are things that parents of young kids should have going into working kids through sports all the way through junior high, high school, all that. This sets a great tone for them. So thanks to you both for being here. And look forward to seeing you all next time, October 1st for Ron Rakua. Thanks all of you for being here. Tonight's production was again produced and directed by Nancy Gates. Thank you for all your work, Nancy, in the advancement office. And we look forward to seeing you all in October.